there is something profoundly unsettling about getting everything you ever wanted. Fiona Campbell spent the entirety of the first season fighting for her right to exist, battling cosmic bureaucracy in the form of the Scarab, traversing impossible dimensions alongside Simon Petrikov, and ultimately earning something most characters in fiction never achieve: canonical legitimacy. Golbetty, that incomprehensible fusion of grief and cosmic power, declared her world real. Prismo's hidden creation was no longer a secret shame tucked away in the Ice King's fractured mind. Fionna and Cake were officially allowed to exist. And yet, as Season 2 opens with the episode titled The Hare and the Sprout, we find Fionna waking up to a world that somehow feels both transformed and exactly the same. The magic she wished for has arrived, but it manifests in small, almost mundane ways. Cake can stretch now, actually stretch like the magical cat she was always meant to be. The television no longer plays cheers on every single channel, a detail that might seem trivial until you remember what that represented. A universe so mundanely limited that even its entertainment options were reduced to a single sitcom about people gathering in a bar where everybody knows your name. Now there are choices. Now there are possibilities. But Fionna herself has not fundamentally changed. She still wakes up in her small apartment. She still struggles with the lingering echo of her ex-boyfriend DJ Flame's music on the radio, quickly changing the station when his songs come on. She still carries the weight of every job she lost, every relationship that crumbled, every moment when she felt like a background character in her own existence. The external circumstances have shifted, but the internal landscape remains remarkably similar, and this is perhaps the most psychologically honest thing the show could have done. Consider the nature of transformation. We often believe that if we could just achieve that one thing, reach that one goal, overcome that one obstacle, everything would fundamentally change. The depressed person thinks that if they could just find the right medication or the right therapist, the darkness would lift permanently. The struggling artist believes that if they could just get that one break, that one recognition, their self-doubt would evaporate. The person in a difficult situation imagines that escape will bring immediate and lasting peace. But psychological research consistently demonstrates that hedonic adaptation is remarkably powerful. We return to our baseline emotional states with surprising speed, regardless of external circumstances. Lottery winners report similar levels of happiness within a year of their windfall. People who experience significant positive life changes often find themselves grappling with the same internal struggles they faced before. Fionna embodies this truth. She saved her entire universe. She was recognized as real by cosmic entities beyond comprehension, and she still feels uncertain about her place in the world. She still seeks validation from former employers, still bristles at the antagonism of Queenie, still carries the weight of being someone who, in her own words, used to suck at her jobs. This is not failure on Fionna's part. This is the honest acknowledgement that heroic moments do not erase the accumulated weight of lived experience. The episode introduces us to Fionna's new normal through a series of small interactions. She helps a former employer with heavy lifting, receiving fairy lights as thanks, noting that Marshall Lee would love them. She visits a paper office where her old boss, a human version of Turtle Princess, gives her a discount on flyers for Gary Prince's new bakery, The Sweet Spot. There is gratitude from these people, acknowledgement that Fionna saved their world from the Scarab. But there is also something almost uncomfortable in how quickly normal life reasserts itself. The cosmic battle is over, and now there are errands to run. This is where the show demonstrates its understanding of post-traumatic existence. not all trauma results in dramatic symptoms. Sometimes, the most disorienting aspect of surviving something extraordinary is the mundanity that follows. You fought for your right to exist against a cosmic auditor who wanted to delete your entire reality, and now you need to pick up cocoa powder for your friend's bakery. The emotional whiplash is real, even if it manifests as a kind of low-grade dissociation, a sense of being present in your life without quite inhabiting it fully. When Fionna encounters Lady Cutter in M. Cron's store, a human gender-bent version of Sir Slicer from the original series, something interesting happens. Lady Cutter steals the cocoa powder Fionna was reaching for, taunting her with casual cruelty, and Fionna attacks. She physically confronts this stranger over baking supplies, snatching the cocoa back with a ferocity that seems disproportionate to the situation. Cake has to scold her, reminding her that it is hard to keep her cool without Fionna trashing the store. This moment reveals something crucial about Fionna's psychological state. She has spent months in survival mode, fighting for her existence across multiple dimensions. Those survival instincts do not simply switch off because the threat has passed. The hypervigilance, the hair-trigger response to perceived challenges, the difficulty distinguishing between genuine threats and minor annoyances, these are all hallmarks of a nervous system that has been primed for danger and has not yet learned that the danger has passed. Fionna is experiencing what we might call post-adventure syndrome, a condition where the skills and reactions that kept you alive in crisis become maladaptive in peaceful circumstances. Meanwhile, running parallel to Fionna's story, we find Huntress Wizard in Oo making a devastating discovery. Finn, the legendary hero of the land of Oo, lies poisoned and weakened, the result of an encounter with a bear in the heart of the forest during the events of the first season. When Huntress finds him, he is being cared for by forest animals, barely conscious, his body marked by scars that tell a story of violence and magical contamination. This discovery sets in motion the central crisis of the season. Finn is dying, and Huntress Wizard will stop at nothing to save him. The parallel structure of the season becomes clear. Fionna struggles with the psychological aftermath of survival, trying to find her place in a world that has changed around her. Huntress Wizard grapples with the potential loss of someone she loves, someone whose relationship with her has always been complicated by her fear of softness, her belief that exceptional beasts like themselves cannot fall in love. Both characters are dealing with different aspects of the same fundamental question. What does it mean to care deeply about something when caring makes you vulnerable? Fionna's vulnerability manifests as a kind of desperate activity. She throws herself into helping Gary build the sweet spot, channeling her energy into something concrete and achievable. The empty lot that will become the bakery represents possibility, a blank space where something new can be created. But it also represents pressure, because real estate in any universe involves money, and money involves Queenie, the antagonistic figure who seems to exist primarily to remind Fionna of her perceived inadequacies. The episode ends with dreams. Fionna, Cake, and their friends dream of fighting knights who turn out to be each other, a symbolic representation of the ways we sometimes battle the people we love. The dreams are weird and fragmentary, as dreams often are, but they carry an undercurrent of anxiety. Even in sleep, Fionna cannot fully relax. Even in the realm of the unconscious, she is preparing for conflict. Huntress Wizard, desperate for answers, brings Finn to Simon, demanding to know what happened in the heart of the forest. Simon, still adjusting to his post-Ice King existence, must confront the consequences of the adventure he shared with Finn. The bear that attacked them was not ordinary. The thorny bush Finn was thrown into was not natural vegetation. Something in the heart of the forest has marked Finn, and that mark is killing him. The psychological richness of these opening moves cannot be overstated. Season 2 is establishing itself as a meditation on aftermath, on the complicated work of continuing to live after the climax has passed. Fionna must figure out who she is when she is not fighting for survival. Huntress Wizard must confront her feelings for Finn when those feelings might lead only to loss. Simon must face the reality that his attempts to heal himself have created collateral damage. And somewhere in the background, the machinery of cosmic law continues to turn, indifferent to the small struggles of individuals who just want to live their lives. The title of the episode, The Hare and the Sprout, references both Fionna, who has always been associated with a certain rabbit-like quality of quick movement and nervous energy, and Huntress Wizard, who arrives in Fionna's world as a tiny plant creature, a sprout that Fionna will nurture back to health. The hare and the sprout are both vulnerable creatures, both requiring specific conditions to thrive. The season will explore what those conditions might be and what happens when they are not met. The second episode, The Crocodile Who Bit a Log, introduces us to one of the season's most psychologically complex elements, the Green Wizards Guild and their relationship to the heart of the forest. This ancient order of magic users has spent centuries drawing power from an imprisoned cosmic entity, and their response to Huntress Wizard's desperate search for answers reveals uncomfortable truths about how institutions protect themselves at the expense of those they claim to serve. When Huntress Wizard travels to the heart of the forest seeking knowledge that might save Finn, she does not find allies. She finds gatekeepers. The Green Wizards have built their entire identity around controlling access to the forest's magic, and an outsider demanding entry threatens the carefully maintained hierarchy that keeps them in power. Their ambush of Huntress Wizard is not merely defensive, it is an assertion of territory, a reminder that some knowledge is considered too dangerous, too valuable, or simply too proprietary to share. This dynamic will feel familiar to anyone who has encountered institutional resistance when seeking help during a crisis. The medical patient who cannot access their own records, the student who cannot get exceptions made despite extraordinary circumstances, the family member trying to navigate bureaucratic systems while their loved one suffers. Institutions develop their own survival instincts, and those instincts often prioritize the institution's continuation over the needs of the individuals it supposedly exists to serve. Meanwhile, in Fionna's world, the struggle over the empty lot intensifies. Queenie, who represents the forces of commercial development and personal antagonism, is not content to merely own property. She wants to assert dominance, to remind Fionna at every opportunity that she is a loser, that her heroic moment was a fluke, that the social order will reassert itself despite any temporary disruptions. The lot becomes a symbolic battleground where two visions of reality compete. Fionna's belief that community and friendship can create something meaningful, and Queenie's insistence that money and power will always win. This conflict mirrors larger cultural tensions about gentrification, community development, and who gets to define what spaces are for. The sweet spot is not just a bakery, it is a gathering place, a home for displaced friends, a physical manifestation of chosen family. Queenie's opposition is not merely about property values, it is about maintaining a world where people like Fionna know their place. The personal and political collapse into each other, as they always do in stories that take their characters seriously. Fionna, Cake, and their friends strategize about how to save the lot. The solutions they consider reveal their individual psychologies. Gary wants to believe that hard work and good intentions will be enough. Marshall Lee, who has his own complicated relationship with wealth and family, understands that the game is rigged, but plays anyway. Cake provides emotional support and practical magic, stretching herself thin, quite literally, to help hold everything together. And Fionna oscillates between determined action and moments of despair, unable to shake the feeling that she is not equipped for this kind of fight. The episode introduces us to Hunter, Fionna's world's version of Huntress Wizard. Where Huntress in Oo is a powerful magical warrior, Hunter in Fionna's world is a Parks Department employee, someone who cares for green spaces in a mundane way. The parallel is intentional and poignant. In a world without magic, the impulse toward nature and wilderness still exists. It simply expresses itself through bureaucratic channels rather than mystical ones. Hunter attends to trees and trails instead of communing with forest spirits. The calling remains the same even when the context changes everything about how it manifests. This parallel becomes significant when Huntress Wizard herself arrives in Fionna's world, having been separated from her pursuit of answers by the defensive magic of the Green Wizards. Stranded in a dimension without the kind of magic she relies upon, Huntress must adapt. Her journey from powerful wizard to vulnerable stranger in a strange land represents a kind of psychological dismemberment. Everything she knows about herself, everything she has built her identity around, becomes irrelevant or inaccessible. The psychological concept of deskilling applies here. When we enter environments that do not recognize or value our competencies, we experience a form of identity dissolution. The skilled surgeon becomes uncertain when faced with a plumbing problem. The confident executive feels lost when navigating unfamiliar social situations. Huntress Wizard, stripped of her magic, must confront who she is beneath the power. The answer is uncomfortable. She is someone who does not know how to function when she cannot rely on her abilities to create distance between herself and others. Huntress has always used her wizardry as armor. Her famous speech about exceptional beasts not being able to fall in love was not wisdom, it was a defense mechanism. If she commits to the identity of the solitary hunter, she never has to risk the vulnerability of genuine connection. But now, powerless and alone in Fionna's world, she cannot retreat behind that identity. She must interact with people as a person, not as a legend. The episode also develops the mystery of Finn's poisoning. Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, and Simon work together in Oo, trying to find a cure for whatever is killing their friend. Their efforts are hampered by incomplete information and the complexity of magical contamination. This plotline introduces themes of medical crisis and caretaker burden that will resonate throughout the season. When someone we love is dying, we enter a kind of psychological time warp where everything else becomes background noise, where our own needs become secondary to the desperate search for solutions. Princess Bubblegum's scientific approach contrasts with Marceline's emotional responses and Simon's guilt. Each character processes the crisis differently, and their interactions reveal the strain that life or death situations place on relationships. Bubblegum wants data and solutions. Marceline wants to do something, anything, to help. Simon cannot stop replaying the events that led to this moment, trapped in a loop of self-recrimination. Together, they form a support system, but even support systems crack under sufficient pressure. The episode's title references a fable about judgment and perception. The crocodile who bites a log mistakes appearance for reality, attacking something that cannot nourish or harm it. Throughout the episode, characters mistake each other's intentions and capabilities. The Green Wizards see Huntress as a threat when she is seeking help. Queenie sees Fionna as a rival when she is simply trying to build something meaningful. Huntress sees her powerlessness as defeat when it might be an opportunity for growth. Everyone is biting logs, expending energy on battles that do not need to be fought. The psychological lesson embedded in this imagery concerns the cognitive distortions that shape our perceptions of conflict. We often enter situations with assumptions about what other people want, what they are capable of, and what their actions mean. These assumptions are frequently wrong, but we act on them anyway, creating self-fulfilling prophecies of antagonism. The crocodile creates enemies out of driftwood because it cannot see beyond its own expectations of threat. By the episode's end, the various plotlines have established their trajectories. Fionna is committed to saving the lot, but unsure how to do so. Huntress Wizard is stranded and struggling. Finn is dying while his friends scramble for answers. And beneath all of this, the season's themes are taking shape. The difficulty of healing, the cost of caring, the ways that love makes us vulnerable even as it gives life meaning. The crocodile has bitten the log, and now everyone must deal with the consequences of that mistaken judgment. The third episode, The Lion of Embers, plunges us into Fionna's romantic history with the deliberate precision of a knife finding an old wound. We learn through flashbacks that Fionna and Flame Prince, before Fionna's world lost its magic, had the kind of relationship that seems destined for epic status. She saved him from the Ice Queen. He burned bright with elemental fire. They were young and powerful and certain that their story would end happily. But stories do not always cooperate with our expectations for them. When Fionna's world transitioned from magical to mundane, Flame Prince became DJ Flame, a human man named Felix who makes music about fire and passion without any literal flames to back up the metaphors. And somewhere in that transition, the relationship ended. Not dramatically, not in any way that would provide closure or narrative satisfaction. He broke up with her over text. The psychological devastation of an inadequate ending cannot be overstated. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We need our experiences to cohere into stories that make sense, that teach us something, that justify the pain we endured. When a relationship ends without explanation, without confrontation, without the dignity of being told to our face that we are being left, we are denied the raw materials needed to construct meaning. We are left with questions that have no answers, rehearsing conversations that will never happen, searching for closure that does not exist. Fionna's fixation on DJ Flame throughout the season is not simply about wanting him back, it is about wanting the story to make sense. If she could just understand why it ended, if she could just get him to acknowledge what they had, maybe she could finally let go. But Felix has moved on. He has a new girlfriend. He performs at venues where people cheer his name without knowing anything about the magical prince he used to be. He has constructed a life that does not require Fionna's presence, and the erasure of their shared history is its own kind of violence. The episode interweaves Fionna's romantic struggles with Cake's first date with M. Cron. The contrast is intentional and illuminating. Cake approaches dating with the nervousness of someone venturing into new territory, while Fionna carries the weight of territory she has already lost. Cake is building something. Fionna is haunted by something that crumbled. Both experiences are valid parts of romantic life, but they require different emotional tools to navigate. Cake's storyline provides welcome comic relief, but it also explores genuine psychological terrain. First dates are exercises in vulnerability management. We present curated versions of ourselves, hoping to be accepted while fearing rejection. Cake's anxiety manifests in classic ways: overthinking her appearance, worrying about saying the wrong thing, wondering whether the connection she feels is reciprocated. These are universal experiences, rendered strange and wonderful by the fact that Cake is a magical stretching cat dating a store owner in a formerly mundane dimension. Meanwhile, Huntress Wizard continues to struggle in Fionna's world. Without her magic, she must resort to more basic survival strategies. The episode reveals her dark fairy tale origin through flashback, an orphan raised by a kind huntsman who died, saving her from a fire. This trauma shaped everything about who she became. She learned that caring for someone means losing them. She learned that safety is an illusion. She learned that the only person she can ultimately rely on is herself. These lessons, forged in childhood tragedy, became the foundation of her worldview. Her fear of softness is not abstract philosophy, it is survival strategy encoded in her nervous system. Every time she has allowed herself to become attached, she has experienced loss. The logical conclusion, from her trauma brain's perspective, is that attachment itself is the problem. If she never gets close, she can never be hurt by distance. But Finn exists. Finn, with his earnest heroism and his willingness to be vulnerable. Finn, who has played his flute for her, who has kissed her, who has invited her into his life despite her resistance. Finn, who is now dying while she is stranded in another dimension, unable to use any of her considerable power to save him. Her worst fear is being realized in slow motion, and she cannot even be present to witness it. The episode's treatment of Prismo and the Scarab introduces cosmic-level drama that contextualizes the personal struggles. When the Scarab freaks out about Huntress Wizard crossing into Fionna's world, Prismo casually dismisses the concern. This is not their problem, he explains, because she arrived through means outside normal cosmic jurisdiction. The bureaucratic indifference is both funny and horrifying. Lives hang in the balance, and the cosmic authorities are debating whether the correct paperwork has been filed. This satirical element connects to real experiences of systemic failure. How often do people fall through cracks because their problems do not fit neatly into existing categories? How many crises go unaddressed because the relevant authorities determine that addressing them is not their job? The Scarab and Prismo represent the limitations of any system that prioritizes rules over outcomes, procedures over people. The episode also reveals that DJ Flame's real name is Felix, connecting him to Flame Princess from the original series, whose name was Phoebe. The parallel naming convention emphasizes that these are genuinely alternate versions of the same essential person. Felix in Fionna's world and Phoebe in Oo share something fundamental about who they are, even though their circumstances have diverged dramatically. This raises interesting questions about identity and essence. What makes us who we are? Our circumstances? Our choices? Some ineffable core that persists across dimensional boundaries? Fionna's interaction with Felix during the episode is painfully realistic. She is trying too hard, laughing at things that are not funny, performing casual friendship while her heart screams for more. He is polite but distant, treating her like someone from his past rather than someone who might be part of his present. The gap between what she wants from the interaction and what he is willing to give creates an excruciating tension that anyone who has tried to maintain contact with an ex will recognize. The episode introduces Fennel, Fionna's doppelganger, whose name echoes Fern from the original series. This parallel suggests that Fionna, like Finn, may have to contend with alternate versions of herself, with questions about which version is real or authentic or worthy of existence. The multiverse that seemed like freedom in Season 1 is revealing itself as a hall of mirrors where identity becomes unstable. Back in Oo, Princess Bubblegum's attempts to develop a cure for Finn's condition lead to a disturbing scene where princesses from across the land show up, believing that true love's kiss will wake him from his coma. This fairy tale logic crashes against the biological reality of magical poisoning. Love is not enough. Wishing is not enough. The problem requires solutions that operate on the same plane as the problem itself. The parade of princesses also highlights Finn's romantic history, the trail of relationships that preceded Huntress Wizard. Flame Princess among them, now dating someone else, serves as a reminder that romantic chapters close whether we are ready or not. The kiss does not wake Finn. Nothing wakes Finn. He lies there, suspended between life and death, while people who love him prove that love alone cannot save him. The lion of the title refers to the vampire king in his lion form, who appears briefly as a callback to earlier Adventure Time mythology, but the ember is more significant. Embers are the last living traces of a fire that has largely died. They can reignite under the right conditions, or they can fade to ash. Fionna's feelings for Felix are embers. Huntress Wizard's connection to Finn is an ember. The hope that everyone will survive the season is an ember. The question is whether any of these small flames can be fanned back into something larger, or whether they will simply burn out. Episode 4, The Cat Who Tipped the Box, presents us with one of the season's most psychologically rich storylines. Cake's brief career as a television actor on the show Cheers. Yes, that Cheers, the sitcom that once played on every channel in Fionna's magicless world, now revealed to be filmed with actual tiny actors in a literal box. The absurdist comedy of this premise carries serious weight about performance, identity, and the commodification of authenticity. When Cake receives an opportunity to appear on Cheers, she approaches it as validation. Her magical abilities, newly restored, include the power to stretch and transform, skills that the production values for their visual spectacle. They want her to become a dragon, to transform herself into something impressive and dramatic for the entertainment of an invisible audience. She is being asked, in other words, to perform a version of herself that serves their purposes rather than her own. This dynamic mirrors countless experiences of marginalized people in entertainment and beyond. Your unique qualities are valuable, but only when they can be packaged and sold. Your authentic self is welcome, but only if it fits within existing frameworks of what is marketable. Cake's stretching powers are interesting to the producers because they can be exploited for content, not because they represent something meaningful about who she is. The pressure to perform builds until Cake, overwhelmed and frustrated, literally tips over the box containing the Cheers set. This destructive act has multiple psychological meanings. On one level, it is a rejection of the role being imposed on her. On another, it is an expression of the rage that accumulates when we feel reduced to our most visible or marketable qualities. On yet another level, it represents the impossibility of containing authentic existence within the boxes that others construct for us. While Cake navigates the entertainment industry's demands, Fionna walks down memory lane in one of the season's most emotionally raw sequences. Heartbroken over DJ Flame, she revisits the locations where their relationship flourished. The coffee shop where they had their first date, the park bench where they watched sunsets, the sidewalk where he first held her hand. Each location is a museum of feelings that no longer have anywhere to go. This ritual of revisiting significant places after a relationship ends is a common grief behavior. We return to spaces, hoping to somehow reconnect with the version of ourselves that existed there, with the feelings that once felt so certain and permanent. But the places themselves are indifferent. The coffee shop serves other couples now. The park bench holds other people's conversations. The sidewalk carries strangers who have no idea that this particular stretch of concrete holds sacred meaning for someone else. Fionna's grief is complicated by the fact that she cannot fully articulate what she lost. Her relationship with Flame Prince occurred in a world that no longer exists in the same form. The memories she carries are from a reality that has been fundamentally altered. This creates a kind of double loss: the loss of the relationship itself and the loss of the context that made the relationship make sense. Huntress Wizard's storyline in this episode focuses on her search for a way home. Stranded in a world without magic, she must find alternative methods to reach Uu, where Finn continues to deteriorate. Her desperation leads her to destroy Fionna's cell phone, severing one potential connection to the multiverse. This impulsive act reflects the psychological state of someone in crisis. Rational planning gives way to urgent action, even when that action may be counterproductive. The episode reveals that Huntress Wizard's origin story involves fire, specifically a house fire that killed her adoptive parents. The parent who raised her, the kind huntsman, died saving her from the flames. This detail adds layers to her fear of softness. Softness, in her experience, is vulnerability. Vulnerability leads to loss. Loss leads to more vulnerability. The cycle reinforces itself until hardness becomes the only viable survival strategy. But hardness has costs. Huntress Wizard struggles to accept help, to form alliances, to trust anyone who offers assistance. Her interactions with Fionna and Cake are marked by abrasiveness and suspicion, even though they genuinely want to help her. She pushes people away because closeness feels dangerous, and yet her mission to save Finn requires her to rely on others. The contradiction creates internal tension that manifests as irritability and aggression. Meanwhile, in Uu, Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, and Simon make a desperate journey to seek Prismo's help. Their hope is that the Wishmaster can simply undo Finn's poisoning, can reset the situation too, before everything went wrong. But Prismo, his face still glitching from the events of Season 1's finale, cannot grant wishes. The cosmic damage done to save Fionna's world has left even the most powerful beings diminished. This revelation carries profound implications for the season's themes. There is no cosmic reset button. There is no external force that can simply make everything better. The characters must find solutions within the constraints of a universe that has been permanently altered by their previous choices. Every action has consequences, and some consequences cannot be undone. The title of the episode, The Cat Who Tipped the Box, operates on multiple levels. Cake literally tips over the Cheers set box, but more symbolically, the phrase evokes the idea of a cat discovering something unexpected inside a container. Schrodinger's cat exists in superposition until observed. Cake's box contains an entire miniature world that falls apart when disrupted. The act of observation, of engagement, changes everything. Fionna observes her past and finds it changed by the act of looking. Huntress Wizard observes her options and finds them more limited than she hoped. The Crew observes Prismo's condition and must accept that hope for easy solutions is unfounded. Everyone is tipping boxes and discovering that what is inside is not what they expected or wanted. The episode ends with multiple cliffhangers. Cake has alienated the television industry. Fionna has received an eviction notice on her apartment door. Huntress Wizard remains stranded without a clear path forward. And Finn continues to die while options dwindle. The box has been tipped, and now everyone must deal with what spilled out. Episode 5, The Butterfly and the River, introduces one of the season's most ambitious narrative devices, time travel, within the dimensional tree that was once Finn and Jake's treehouse. When Huntress Wizard, desperate to find any path back to Oo, cuts off her own hand believing it will activate dormant magic, the resulting energy explosion pulls her and Cake into a space where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The treehouse has always been a loaded symbol in Adventure Time mythology. Built in an era when Finn was young and Jake was alive, it represents home, safety, and the partnership that defined both characters' lives. But homes change. Safety is temporary. Partners are lost. The treehouse in Season 2 functions as a kind of psychological palimpsest, layers of meaning written over each other, never fully erasing what came before. Cake becoming Huntress Wizard's severed arm inside this space is both grotesque and meaningful. Cake has always been Fionna's extension, in some sense, her support system, her additional limbs, reaching out when Fionna's own reach was insufficient. Now she becomes another character's prosthetic, filling in where loss has created absence. The image literalizes emotional dynamics that operate throughout the season. The time travel sequence allows the characters to witness moments from Adventure Time's long history. Old Oo, the Fionna world before magic disappeared, and crucially, scenes from Marshall Lee's childhood under his mother, Hannah Abadir's control. These glimpses provide context that illuminates present-day behavior, Marshall's anxiety around his mother, his fear of her judgment, his desperate desire for approval that she withholds. All of this was forged in the moments we now witness. Hannah Abadir is one of the season's most psychologically complex antagonists because she is not a villain in any straightforward sense. She is a parent who believes she is doing what is best for her child. She demands excellence because she believes excellence will protect him. She withholds approval because she believes too much praise leads to complacency. Her love is real, but it expresses itself through control rather than support. This parenting style, which psychologists might describe as authoritarian or conditionally accepting, creates specific psychological outcomes in children. Marshall Lee, now an adult, still carries the tension his mother instilled. He cannot fully relax even in safe situations. He worries constantly about whether he is meeting expectations, even expectations that no one has articulated. He has internalized his mother's critical voice so thoroughly that he no longer needs her present to feel judged. The flashback showing young Marshall receiving a keyboard from the Ice Cream Queen, who offers unconditional acceptance and encouragement, provides crucial contrast. This moment of genuine support, of being valued for who he is rather than what he achieves, becomes the foundation of Marshall's music career. The gift is not just an instrument, it is permission to express himself without fear of criticism. Meanwhile, Fiona's attempts to save the lot take on increasingly desperate dimensions. She needs $70,000 by Sunday to prevent demolition. a sum that seems impossible given her resources. The episode forces her to consider working with Hannah Abadir, who has offered to host a fundraiser in her family mausoleum. This Faustian bargain carries obvious risks. Hannah helps no one without expecting something in return, and her interest in Fiona likely has ulterior motives. The mausoleum setting is symbolically loaded. Hannah is offering Fiona space among the dead, surrounded by sarcophagi that include one carved with Marshall Lee's likeness. The message is not subtle. Align with Hannah and become entombed in her web of obligation and control. Fiona can see the danger, but desperation narrows options. When you are drowning, you grab whatever is floating nearby, even if it might pull you under. Cake's vision within the temporal tree provides the episode's most haunting sequence. She witnesses a possible future where the world is covered in silk, where baby Finn carries a needle and butterfly cape, where something catastrophic has happened that rewrites reality. This vision may reference the video game Hollow Knight, or it may be entirely new mythology, but its meaning is clear. The choices made in the present shape futures that have not yet arrived. The butterfly of the title connects to chaos theory's famous metaphor. A butterfly flapping its wings in one location can cause a hurricane elsewhere. Small actions have large consequences. Cake, observing the temporal stream, kills a spider to save a butterfly. This seemingly kind act, we later learn, may have set in motion the very apocalypse she witnessed. 5 butterflies from that tree 1,000 years ago started the disaster. This revelation introduces profound questions about responsibility and unintended consequences. If Cake's compassionate act causes worldwide destruction, is she guilty? She could not have known. She was trying to help, but the destruction happens anyway, and her choice initiated the chain of events. The butterfly effect operates without regard for intention. The parallel to real-world environmental and social challenges is not difficult to see. Climate change results from billions of small decisions, none of which alone would cause catastrophe, but which aggregate into existential threat. Social movements build momentum from individual actions that ripple outward in unpredictable ways. We are all constantly flapping butterfly wings, unable to trace the hurricanes we may be causing. The episode also develops Marshall Lee's relationship with Gary's family. Meeting his boyfriend's relatives triggers Marshall's anxiety about acceptability. Will they see him as good enough? Will his differences cause rejection? The scenes of Gary's family sharing stories and accepting Marshall despite his awkwardness provide a counterweight to the Hannah Abadir dynamic. Not all families operate through conditional acceptance. Some families simply love their members and want them to be happy. This contrast highlights that Marshall has choices about which relationship patterns to perpetuate. He can continue seeking his mother's impossible-to-earn approval, or he can build new relationships with people who accept him as he is. The path forward involves recognizing that parental validation, however desperately desired, may never arrive, and that this absence, while painful, need not define his entire emotional life. By episode's end, the various narrative threads have tightened. Fiona is considering a dangerous alliance with Hannah. Cake has possibly set in motion apocalyptic consequences. Huntress, Wizard and Cake have experienced visions that both illuminate and terrify, and the deadline for saving the lot approaches with the inexorability of all deadlines, indifferent to whether anyone is ready. The river of the title suggests flow and continuity, time moving forward regardless of attempts to redirect it. Butterflies and rivers, fragile creatures and elemental forces, individual choices and systemic pressures. The episode weaves these elements together into a meditation on how little control we have over the consequences of our actions, and how we must act anyway, knowing that we cannot know what our choices will ultimately mean. Episode 6, The Bird in the Clock, forces every character to confront their relationship with death. The cosmic owl, that prophetic bird god whose appearance in dreams signals approaching mortality, becomes both prey and pivot point as Huntress Wizard chases him across the dreamscape in a desperate attempt to prevent Finn's croak dream from completing. The episode's structure is deliberately disorienting, shifting between Fiona's waking world, where she organises a fundraiser concert in the Abadir family mausoleum, and the surreal landscape of interconnected dreams, where characters confront their deepest fears. This dual tracking reflects the show's understanding that we simultaneously inhabit multiple realities at all times. There is the world of practical concerns, bills to pay, and lots to save, and there is the internal world where our psyches process the weight of existence. Huntress Wizard's pursuit of the cosmic owl is driven by a kind of furious love. She has spent the season denying her feelings for Finn, retreating behind philosophy about exceptional beasts and the dangers of softness. But actions speak louder than arguments, and she is literally chasing death itself to prevent it from claiming someone she refuses to admit she loves. The Croak Dream is Adventure Time's elegant solution to a storytelling problem. How do you create meaningful stakes in a universe where magic exists? The Croak Dream establishes that when the cosmic owl appears in your dream, death follows. It is not a warning that can be heeded or avoided. It is a notification of coming transition. The rules are cosmic law, not guidelines. Huntress's belief that she can interrupt this process reveals something important about her psychology. She has always operated as though determination and skill could overcome any obstacle. This worldview has served her well in most contexts. She is, after all, an extremely capable wizard. But some things cannot be hunted or defeated. Some things must simply be endured. Fiona's dreamscape journey takes her through her friends' unconscious minds. Cake's dream of giving birth to kittens with Cron, though the babies look eerily wrong. Marshall Lee's dream of running towards Simone, the ice cream queen who showed him kindness, only for her to transform into his mother Hana, berating him for untied shoes. Ellis P's dream of being tickled on a lab table by Venus Cosmics, strange and unsettling in ways that resist easy interpretation. These dreams operate as windows into characters' fears and desires. Cake worries about her identity in romantic partnership, whether creating a family will change her in fundamental ways. Marshall is still processing childhood trauma, still seeking the acceptance that his mother withholds. Ellis carries experiences with mysterious entities that have not been fully processed. Fiona, passing through these dreams, catches glimpses of her friends' inner lives that she would not otherwise access. This forced intimacy creates obligation. Once you know someone's secret fears, you cannot unknow them. The relationship is permanently altered by the knowledge. Her encounter with a scary alternate version of herself in her own nightmare introduces a recurring season motif. Fiona's fear that the worst things people say about her might be true. This shadow Fiona embodies every criticism, every self-doubt, every moment of failure. It is not a separate entity. It is a part of her, externalized into confrontation. Jungian psychology would identify this as the shadow archetype, the repository of everything we reject about ourselves. The shadow does not disappear when we refuse to acknowledge it. It gains power in darkness. Fiona's task, which she will work toward throughout the season, is integration, accepting that the shadow version of herself exists, without allowing it to define her entirely. The episode's climax involves Huntress Wizard actually killing the cosmic owl. This act, which should be impossible, which violates the fundamental rules of the Adventure Time universe, creates immediate cosmic consequences. Huntress has absorbed the owl's power, but she has also broken something that may not be fixable. The death of the cosmic owl raises profound questions about the nature of mortality in a universe where such things can be altered. If the prophet of death is dead, what happens to death itself? The answer, we will learn, is complicated. The owl's demise does not end mortality. It simply removes the warning system. People will still die, but they will not dream of the bird first. Whether this is better or worse is not clear. Knowing death approaches gives time for preparation, for farewells, for setting affairs in order. But knowing also brings dread, the anticipatory grief that can be worse than the event itself. Huntress has changed the rules, and like all rule changes, this one will have unpredictable effects. The fundraiser concert in the mausoleum provides dark comedy counterpoint to the dreamscape drama. Marshall Lee performing in a space dedicated to death, surrounded by sarcophagi, while his mother watches with her characteristic cold approval. Gary's attempt to support Marshall, while managing his own discomfort with the Abadir family dynamic. Fiona's growing awareness that accepting Hana's help has entangled her in something she may not be able to escape. The mausoleum setting literalizes the stakes. They are raising money in a house of death. They are celebrating life in a space designed to memorialize its end. The juxtaposition is not accidental. Every victory contains the seeds of eventual loss. Every celebration is shadowed by the awareness that all celebrations eventually end. The episode ends with Huntress Wizard changed, carrying the owl's power but also its burden. Fiona wakes knowing things about her friends that complicate her relationships with them. And somewhere, Finn's body continues to fail, the deadline of his mortality approaching regardless of what has happened to its cosmic timekeeper. Episode 7, The Wolves Who Wandered, may be the season's most psychedelic installment. When DJ Flame goes missing, Fiona and Fennel use wizard eyes, a magical vision state induced by Huntress Wizard's plant, to search for him. What follows is a journey to Venus, a city powered by authentic affection, where the only weapons are sincerity and the only currency is genuine emotional expression. Except that Venus may not be real. The episode's ending reveals that Fiona and Fennel were hallucinating, that their fantastic adventure was a shared illusion induced by the wizard eyes. And yet, Fiona still has the engagement ring she received from one of Venus's locals. A physical object that should not exist if the journey was entirely imaginary. This ambiguity is the episode's thesis statement. What is real when reality itself becomes unstable? If the experience felt genuine, if it produced lasting effects, does it matter whether it occurred in what we conventionally call the real world? Philosophy has long grappled with these questions. Descartes' demon, the brain in a vat, the simulation hypothesis, all explore the possibility that our perceived reality may not correspond to actual reality. But Adventure Time approaches the question differently. Rather than treating the uncertainty as a problem to be solved, the show suggests that the distinction between real and imaginary may be less important than we typically assume. Venus, as described, is a place where authenticity functions as power. The Queen unveils Earth's greatest source of love, with flame glowing in a power orb. To defeat the champions, Fiona and Fennel must express genuine esteem, not flattery or manipulation, but actual positive regard for each other. Fiona fails when she tries to perform sincerity. Fennel succeeds when she simply speaks truth. The lesson is powerful precisely because it occurs in an ambiguous context. Whether or not Venus exists as a physical location, the experience taught Fiona something real about the difference between performed emotion and genuine feeling. She has spent much of the season trying to manage her image, to appear capable and in control even when she feels neither. Venus, real or imaginary, demanded she drop the performance. Fennel's role in this episode complicates Fiona's sense of identity. As Fiona's doppelganger, Fennel represents a version of herself that she must confront. The two share history, share essential qualities, and yet they are different people with different trajectories. Fiona must find a way to accept Fennel's existence without feeling threatened by it, must recognize their commonalities without losing her sense of individual identity. This mirrors real psychological challenges faced by twins, by people who share significant characteristics with others, by anyone who must negotiate the boundary between connection and dissolution. How much can you share with someone else before you lose yourself? How separate must you remain to maintain a coherent identity? Meanwhile, Huntress Wizard's storyline continues to develop as she attempts to navigate the heart of the forest using her newly acquired powers. The riddle she received, a broken tool, seeks the flame, takes on new meaning as she realizes that Fiona herself may be the tool referenced. Fiona, broken in the sense of being damaged and incomplete, can lead Huntress to what she needs. This reframing of Fiona as broken is both harsh and potentially liberating. Broken things are often discarded, seen as less valuable than intact versions. But broken things can also be understood as having been through something, as carrying the marks of experience that complete things lack. The Japanese concept of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, celebrates the breaks as part of the object's history. Fiona's brokenness, in this light, is not a deficit, but a qualification. The wolves of the title are Fiona and Fennel, wandering together through states of consciousness that blur the boundary between individual and shared experience. Wolves hunt in packs, relying on cooperation and communication to bring down prey larger than any individual could handle. Fiona and Fennel, learning to work together, develop the kind of wordless coordination that wolf packs exhibit. Ellis P's mysterious encounter with the alien woman, first glimpsed in this episode and later explored more fully, introduces another layer of reality confusion. Ellis is experiencing things that others cannot see or verify, and whether these experiences are genuine contact or some form of breakdown is not established. The show maintains ambiguity, where clarity might feel like a betrayal of the themes. Back in Fiona's world, the sweet spot's survival remains uncertain. Marshall Lee's concert, which should be the solution to the fundraising crisis, is threatened by his mother's conditional support and his own anxiety about performing while everything feels unstable. The episode does not resolve this tension so much as acknowledge it, letting the uncertainty simmer. The wolves continue to wander as the episode ends. Fiona has learned something about authenticity, but must now apply that learning in contexts where sincerity feels risky. Fennel has proven herself an ally, but their relationship remains complex, and Huntress Wizard, closer to understanding how to save Finn, is also further from the certainty that she can actually accomplish it. Episode 8, The Insect That Sang, delivers the season's most devastating sequence of events with the precision of a surgeon performing unwanted but necessary procedures. When Fiona and Huntress Wizard are suddenly teleported to Cosmic Court, charged with the murder of the Cosmic Owl, every character's worst tendencies emerge under pressure. The Cosmic Court operates according to rules that bear only passing resemblance to human justice. Orbo, the cosmic entity presiding, is interested in establishing guilt, not truth. The Scarab, still nursing grievances from Season 1, participates with barely concealed satisfaction. Fionna and Huntress are defendants in a system designed to produce convictions, not exonerations. Under this pressure, Fionna makes a choice that defines her arc's darkest moment. She falsely implicates Finn. Panicked, desperate to save herself and Huntress, she throws someone who cannot defend himself under the cosmic bus. The moment is devastating precisely because we understand why she does it. She is scared. She is overwhelmed. She cannot see another way out. This is how good people do terrible things. Not from malice, but from fear. Not from evil intention, but from the narrowing of options that crisis creates. Fionna is not a villain. She is a person whose survival instincts overrode her ethics in a moment of extreme stress. The guilt that follows will haunt her for the rest of the season. Huntress Wizard's reaction, bonking Fionna on the head, expresses justified anger but also helplessness. She cannot undo what Fionna has done. She can only express displeasure at a situation that has become monumentally worse. Finn, comatose and unable to advocate for himself, now faces cosmic prosecution for a crime Huntress committed. Meanwhile, Cake is left to manage Boys' Night and the Sweet Spot fundraiser alone. This storyline provides necessary tonal contrast, showing Cake's competence and determination even as Fionna falters. Cake secures a new location, coordinates performers, sets up a live feed for Felix's performance, and raises more than enough money to save the lot. She does everything right. The contrast is pointed. Cake succeeds through direct action and practical problem solving. Fionna fails through panic and poor decisions. Both characters are sympathetic. Both are trying their best. But outcomes diverge based on how they respond to pressure. The show does not moralize about this difference. It simply presents it. The episode's prologue reveals the origin of the Green Wizards Guild, showing how ordinary bandits were granted magical power by the heart of the forest, only to imprison the entity that helped them. This backstory establishes a pattern. Those who receive gifts often exploit the givers. The Green Wizard's corruption is not aberration. It is predictable outcome when power is given without accountability. Princess Bubblegum's mercy killing of the heart of the forest represents one possible response to exploitation, ending the suffering by ending the sufferer. It is a terrible solution, but it is also the only solution available in that moment. The heart has been enslaved and abused for over 1,000 years. Continuing its existence means continuing its torment. PB's choice, while violent, can be understood as compassionate. Huntress Wizard, using Fiona's engagement ring, the ring from the possibly imaginary Venus, to cut through their prison, suggests that what happened on Venus was real in some meaningful sense. The ring exists. The ring has power. Whatever Venus was, or was not, it produced effects that persist. The insect of the title refers to multiple possibilities. The cicada, like creatures that appear in the cosmic court. The small beings whose songs are easily ignored, or perhaps Fionna herself, who feels increasingly small and insignificant against cosmic forces that care nothing for her individual existence. The episode ends with Fionna returning to her world to find that Cake has succeeded without her. The Sweet Spot is saved. The community has come together. Everything Fionna was working toward has been achieved, and she was not there to participate. This victory should bring relief, but instead it brings devastation. If the community can succeed without her, what is her role? Her response, driven by hurt and exclusion feelings, is to destroy the Sweet Spot. She does not plan this destruction. She does not want it. But something inside her, some wounded part that cannot tolerate being unnecessary, lashes out. And then the bakery that represented hope and community lies in ruins. The question hangs in the air, whether spoken or merely thought. What have I done? Fionna has undermined everything she claimed to care about. She has proven her critics right about her destructive tendencies. She has become the thing she feared being. Episode 9, The Worm and His Orchard, takes us deeper into the multiverse's psychological infrastructure than any previous Adventure Time content. The Undergrowth, where unprocessed, painful memories from across all realities manifest as red orbs hanging on personal trauma trees, represents a literal visualization of psychological healing processes. The Karmic Worm, revealed as the cosmic owl's long-lost twin brother, has been banished here to eat pain and transform it. The mechanism is specific. He consumes trauma, processes it internally, and excretes transformed material that grows into trees, producing thoughts that float upward, returning to their owners as processed rather than raw experience. It is, essentially, cosmic therapy. Fionna's arrival in the Undergrowth brings her face to face with Fern, Finn's grass doppelganger who died in the original series finale. Fern's presence here represents one possible afterlife for Adventure Time characters. Not heaven or hell, but continued existence in a realm of psychological process, tending to the psychic detritus of the multiverse. Fern has achieved what he never could in life, acceptance of his unique identity, no longer tormented by the question of whether he is Finn or something else. Fern has embraced being himself, a self that includes Finn-derived elements, but is not reducible to them. His peace offers hope that identity confusion can eventually resolve. His tour of Finn's trauma tree is devastating. The orbs contain memories we recognize from Adventure Time's run. Losing his arm in Escape from the Citadel, various relationship failures, moments of desperation and loss. But the largest orb, the one that has never floated upward, contains something we do not fully see. Finn screaming Jake's name in a way that suggests catastrophic loss. The implication is clear. Jake is not simply absent from the story. Something terrible happened to him. Fern's warning that Fionna does not want to know what is in that orb suggests that the memory's contents would break something in Finn, or perhaps in us. Some traumas are so severe that even acknowledging them threatens stability. Cake's bonding with the Karmic Worm develops into the season's most unexpected relationship. Their shared experiences of isolation and identity confusion create genuine connection. Both have been separated from their original contexts. Both have had to find purpose in strange circumstances. Both carry wounds that ordinary social interactions cannot address. When Cake decides to stay in the Undergrowth with the Karmic Worm, rather than return to Fiona's world, the choice represents healthy boundary setting. Cake has always defined herself in relation to Fionna, has always been the support system rather than the supported. The Undergrowth offers her the opportunity to explore who she is, independent of that role. This separation is painful for Fionna, but necessary for both characters' growth. Codependent relationships, however loving, can prevent individuals from developing full autonomous selfhood. Cake staying behind is not abandonment. It is differentiation, the psychological process by which we establish ourselves as separate beings while maintaining connection. Witch Wizard's transformation into a monstrous entity and subsequent defeat by Huntress Wizard resolves one antagonist threat while raising questions about mercy and justice. Huntress defeats Witch Wizard without killing her, showing growth from her earlier choice to kill the cosmic owl. She is learning that victory does not require destruction. The cosmic owl's resurrection, through the Karmic Worm's intervention, creates fascinating complications. The owl confesses that his death was essentially assisted suicide. He staged his impalement by Huntress because he wanted to escape his eternal duties. Croak dreams are over forever, he declares, and flies away into the cosmic expanse. This revelation reframes everything we thought we understood about the owl's death. Huntress is not a murderer. She was an unwitting tool in someone else's exit strategy. But the ethical complexity remains. The owl used her to accomplish what he was forbidden to do himself. Huntress's agency was compromised, even as her guilt is absolved. The episode ends with separations across multiple dimensions. Fiona returns to her world alone. Cake remains in the Undergrowth. Huntress Wizard is trapped without a way back to Oo because the heart of the forest has died. Princess Bubblegum, running out of options, contacts Minerva Campbell, Finn's mother, as a final hope. Each character now faces their challenges without their usual support systems. This isolation, while painful, creates the conditions for individual growth. Sometimes we can only discover what we are capable of when the people we depend on are not available to help. The season finale, The Bear and the Rose, must resolve narrative threads that have been multiplying since the first episode, while remaining true to the emotional complexity the season has established. It accomplishes this through a structure that splits focus between multiple dimensions, multiple characters, and multiple forms of healing. The bear of the title refers to Finn, who was poisoned by the bear in the heart of the forest, whose entire crisis stems from an act of heroism that went wrong. The rose refers to Huntress Wizard, who has always been associated with green magic and the forest, who will become the new heart of the forest by connecting her scattered seed duplicates across the multiverse. This transformation represents the season's thesis about healing and growth. Huntress Wizard's fragmentation throughout the season, pieces of her scattered across dimensions, forced to adapt without access to her usual powers, creates the conditions for a larger wholeness. By gathering herself from multiple realities, she becomes something more than she was. Not just a wizard, but a nexus of green magic, a living heart of the forest. The psychological parallel is not subtle. Trauma fragments us. We lose parts of ourselves to different coping mechanisms, different defensive strategies, different aspects of our lives that cannot communicate with each other. Healing involves integration, gathering the scattered pieces and allowing them to form a coherent whole. Huntress Wizard's journey models this process at cosmic scale. Fiona's journey to save Finn requires her to travel through his mind and heart, passing through worlds that represent different aspects of his psychological landscape. Pillow World, Lemongrab's Castle, the Belly of the Beast, Old Ruins, Starwell to Neddy, the Pit of the Lich. Each location corresponds to experiences and memories from Adventure Time's long run. This internal geography literalizes the psychological truth that we contain multitudes. Finn's mind is not a single unified space, but a collection of environments shaped by his experiences. Some are warm and safe, others are dangerous and traumatic. Moving through someone's psyche requires navigating this variety. The box where Mind Finn hides bears the numbers 4, 5, 10, representing the original air date of Adventure Time's first episode in April of 2010. This detail grounds the cosmic story in concrete history, reminding us that Finn's psychological landscape was shaped by everything we watched over the series' run. The show is acknowledging its own mythology while moving forward. Princess Bubblegum's attempts to save Finn's body while his mind is being accessed creates urgency. Science alone has failed. Magic alone has failed. The solution requires both. Requires Fiona's willingness to enter dangerous psychological territory. Requires Huntress Wizard's transformation. Requires everyone contributing what they can. The kiss between Huntress Wizard and Finn, after Fiona helps reconnect his soul to his body, finally delivers the romantic resolution that has been teased since the episode Flute Spell in the original series. Exceptional beasts, it turns out, can fall in love. The philosophy that kept Huntress away from connection was never wisdom. It was fear dressed as logic. The revelation that Farmworld Finn married his world's version of Huntress Wizard suggests that across all realities, there is something essential about their connection. This is not destiny in a deterministic sense, but pattern in a meaningful sense. Some people find each other across impossible distances. Some bonds persist despite the multiverse's attempts to scramble them. Fionna's storyline reaches resolution through acceptance rather than triumph. She cannot undo the destruction of the sweet spot. She cannot pretend she did not make terrible choices under pressure. But she can acknowledge what happened, can participate in rebuilding, can learn from her mistakes without being destroyed by them. The time skip at the episode's end shows the sweet spot completed. Fionna wearing a pink rose in her hair, the community gathered. Huntress Wizard teaching a class on green magic without exploitation suggests that she has found a way to share power without the corruption that defined the Green Wizards. The cycles that seemed inevitable have been interrupted. The post-credits scene with Marshall Lee meeting Hudson Abadir, his biological father, introduces threat that will presumably drive future seasons. But for now, the season ends on qualified hope. Not everything is fixed. Not everyone is healed. But the characters have survived their crises and emerged changed in ways that might, eventually, prove to be growth. The bear and the rose are wounded things that somehow persist. Bears hibernate and emerge. Roses bloom and wither, and bloom again. The season's final images suggest resilience without denying damage. These characters have been through something. They will go through more, and they will continue, because that is what living things do. They continue. Throughout Season 2 of Fionna and Cake, the relationship between Fionna Campbell and Finn the human operates as a meditation on the nature of identity itself. They are not copies of each other, not simply gender-swapped versions produced by cosmic machinery. They are, the show insists, separate individuals who happen to share essential qualities: courage, impulsivity, loyalty, and a tendency towards self-destruction when things become overwhelming. Fionna's journey, through Finn's mind in the finale, crystallizes something the season has been building toward. Understanding someone else requires navigating their internal landscape, and that navigation reveals as much about the navigator as the navigated. When Fionna encounters Finn's memories, his fears, his defensive structures, she recognizes them, not because they are identical to her own, but because they rhyme. The psychology of mirroring suggests that we understand others by finding correspondences with our own experience. We cannot directly access another person's consciousness. We can only infer its contents based on how their behavior maps onto our self-knowledge. Fionna's ability to help Finn stems from her recognition that she has faced similar challenges, has constructed similar defenses, has struggled with similar impulses. But the mirroring is not perfect, and the imperfections matter. Finn grew up in a world of magic and adventure, supported by Jake, mentored by various beings across Oo. Fionna grew up in a mundane world that only recently acquired magic, largely alone except for Cake, lacking the heroic context that gave Finn's impulses constructive outlet. These differences produced different people, even though the underlying psychological material is similar. The season explores this through contrasts. Finn, when traumatized, tends toward repression. His trauma tree in the Undergrowth is heavy with orbs that never float upward. Fionna, when traumatized, tends toward action. She destroys the sweet spot rather than sitting with her feelings of exclusion. Both responses are maladaptive. Both emerge from similar psychological structures. Neither is simply the other one with pronouns changed. Huntress Wizard and Hunter provide another parallel that illuminates through difference. Huntress is a powerful magic user whose identity centers on her abilities. Hunter is a Parks Department employee whose connection to nature expresses itself through bureaucratic channels. When they meet, Huntress's disdain for Hunter is immediate and harsh. He is a soft, weak version of herself. But this judgment reveals more about Huntress than about Hunter. Her disgust at softness, her equation of magical power with personal worth, her inability to imagine valuable existence without the abilities she has built her identity around. These are limitations, not insights. Hunter may lack her power, but he has things she lacks. Comfort with vulnerability, ease in social situations, the ability to form connections without constantly defending against them. The season suggests that alternate versions of ourselves are not better or worse. They are simply different adaptations to different circumstances. Fionna is not a failed Finn any more than Hunter is a failed Huntress Wizard. Each developed the tools their environment required. Each carries the specific wounds their specific life inflicted. Each is a complete person, not a partial version of some more authentic original. This has implications for how we think about our own lives. The versions of ourselves we might have become under different circumstances are not ghosts haunting us with might-have-beens. They are simply other adaptations, other ways the essential stuff of us could have been shaped. The person you are is not less real because you can imagine being someone else. Fionna's acceptance of Fennel, her doppelganger in her own world, represents growth in this direction. Earlier in the season, Fennel's existence felt threatening, a reminder that Fionna's specific identity might be arbitrary or replaceable. By the finale, Fionna has learned that Fennel's existence does not diminish her own. They can both exist. They can even help each other. The universe is large enough for multiple versions of similar patterns. Season 2 is saturated with grief. Huntress Wizard grieves the potential loss of Finn throughout the season. Finn carries unprocessed grief for Jake, so heavy that Fern will not let anyone touch the orb containing it. Fionna grieves her relationship with DJ Flame, her sense of belonging in her own community, her image of herself as someone who helps rather than destroys. The Karmic Worm grieves his separation from his brother for eons. Even the Cosmic Owl, it turns out, was so exhausted by his eternal role that death seemed preferable to continued existence. The show's treatment of grief avoids simple resolution. Characters do not work through their losses and emerge healed. Instead, grief becomes a permanent feature of their psychological landscape, something that must be accommodated rather than overcome. This is more realistic than the narrative arc of grief we often see in fiction, where loss creates a problem that the story then solves. Real grief does not resolve, it transforms. The Karmic Worm's metaphor of pain balls, floating upward after being processed, suggests that trauma can be metabolized, that raw experience can become integrated memory, but this is different from elimination. The tree remains. New pain balls will accumulate. The work of processing is ongoing rather than completable. Finn's trauma tree, heavy with unprocessed orbs, represents what happens when grief is not engaged with. Repression is a temporary strategy that creates long-term problems. The orbs do not disappear because Finn refuses to look at them. They accumulate, weighing the tree down, affecting everything, even when they are not consciously acknowledged. The largest orb, containing whatever happened to Jake, is terrifying precisely because it is sealed. We do not see its contents. We only see Finn's reaction in the memory, screaming Jake's name in horror. The show trusts us to imagine what could produce such a reaction, and our imagination likely constructs something worse than any specific event could be. This is sophisticated understanding of trauma. The worst traumas are often those we cannot fully articulate, cannot reduce to specific images or narratives. They exist as overwhelming effects, emotions without clear objects, horror that cannot be contained by story. Finn's refusal to process Jake's death is not laziness, it is survival. Some things are so devastating that approaching them directly would destroy our ability to function. Huntress Wizard's grief operates differently. Where Finn represses, Huntress acts. Her entire season arc is driven by grief for what she might lose, by anticipatory mourning for Finn's potential death. This forward-looking grief motivates her journey across dimensions, her confrontation with the Green Wizards, her killing of the Cosmic Owl. Grief can be fuel, but fuel burns. The danger in Huntress's approach is burnout, the exhaustion that comes from sustained emergency response. By the season's end, she has given everything she has transformed herself into the new heart of the forest, has saved Finn through sheer force of will. But this triumph carries costs. She is fundamentally changed by what saving him required. She can never return to being simply Huntress Wizard. She is now something larger and more responsible. Fiona's grief trajectory is more chaotic. She does not repress like Finn or act like Huntress. She oscillates between denial and overwhelming emotion, between attempts to control her feelings and explosions of uncontrolled affect. The destruction of the sweet spot emerges from this instability, a moment when the grief she has been managing broke through her defenses. The season suggests that there is no correct way to grieve, only more and less sustainable approaches. Repression works until it does not. Action works until burnout. Oscillation works until the oscillations become too extreme. What matters is not finding the right method, but remaining engaged with the process, allowing the pain balls to be metabolized rather than indefinitely sealed. Hana Abadir looms over Season 2 as a figure of parental failure that never announces itself as such. She is not an abusive mother in any obvious sense. She provides for Marshall Lee. She appears at important events. She offers resources when her son's projects require them. By many external measures, she is a supportive parent. But support that comes with conditions is control dressed as generosity. Hana's help always carries expectations. Her presence always involves evaluation. Marshall Lee has internalized her critical gaze so thoroughly that he cannot relax even when she is not present. He worries constantly about meeting standards that shift without warning, about failing tests he did not know he was taking. The flashback to young Marshall receiving a keyboard from the Ice Cream Queen provides crucial contrast. Simone offers unconditional acceptance and encouragement. When Marshall worries about dropping the keyboard, she throws another ice cream, demonstrating that mistakes are not catastrophes, that imperfection does not result in withdrawal of care. This moment planted the seed that would grow into Marshall's music career. Not because Simone was a better parent than Hana, but because she offered something Hana was constitutionally incapable of providing. The psychology here connects to attachment theory. Children need both conditional and unconditional regard to develop healthy self-concepts. Conditional regard teaches that performance matters, that effort produces results, that the world responds to what we do. Unconditional regard teaches that we are worthy independent of performance, that love does not need to be earned, that we have intrinsic value. Hana provides only conditional regard. Marshall must earn every positive response through achievement and compliance. This creates drive, but also anxiety, perfectionism, that can never be satisfied because the target keeps moving. Marshall's adult personality, his mixture of ambition and insecurity, traces directly to this parenting style. The mausoleum scene, where Hana shows Marshall the sarcophagus bearing his likeness, crystallizes her relationship to his autonomy. She has already prepared his tomb. She has decided how he will be memorialized. The message is not subtle. You belong to me. Your story is mine to write. Even your death will be shaped by my preferences. Marshall's relationship with Gary represents an attempt to break this pattern. Gary's family offers the unconditional acceptance that Hannah withholds. Their easy warmth, their willingness to share embarrassing stories, their obvious pleasure in Gary's happiness. All of this is foreign to Marshall's experience, but desperately needed. He is learning, in his 30s, what secure attachment feels like. But learning does not immediately produce competence. Marshall is awkward around Gary's family, anxious about making mistakes, hyper-aware of how he might be perceived. The patterns established in childhood do not simply disappear because we encounter healthier alternatives. They must be gradually overwritten through repeated positive experiences, a process that takes years rather than episodes. The season-ending scene, showing Marshall meeting Hunson Abadir, suggests that parental complications will continue into future seasons. Hunson, Marshall's biological father, carries his own set of issues and possibilities. Whether his involvement will help or harm Marshall remains to be seen. Huntress Wizard's arc across Season 2 represents one of the most complete character transformations in Adventure Time history. She begins the season as a lone hunter, defined by her skills, armoured by her philosophy of exceptional beasts, pursuing a goal through force of will. She ends the season as the heart of the forest, integrated across dimensions, connected to everything she previously kept at distance. The transformation is not comfortable. At each stage, Huntress must surrender something she believed essential to her identity. Stranded in Fionna's world, she loses access to her magic. Forced to rely on others, she loses her self-sufficiency. Killing the cosmic owl, she loses her innocence. Connecting her scattered duplicates, she loses her singularity. Each loss creates space for something new. Without magic, she develops adaptability. Without self-sufficiency, she develops trust. Without innocence, she develops responsibility. Without singularity, she develops connection. The person who emerges is richer than the person who was stripped down, but the stripping was necessary for the enrichment to occur. This pattern mirrors processes of psychological growth that require ego dissolution before ego reconstruction. The child who must surrender childhood fantasies of omnipotence to develop realistic adult competence. The addict who must surrender substances to develop authentic self-regulation. The grieving person who must surrender the lost relationship to develop new capacities for connection. Growth often feels like death because it requires parts of us to die. Huntress's fear of softness, her belief that attachment leads to vulnerability, leads to loss, was not irrational. Her traumatic history taught her these lessons through brutal experience. The huntsman who raised her died because he loved her, because he put himself in danger to save her. The logical conclusion, from her young mind's perspective, was that being loved is dangerous, and loving others is dangerous. But survival strategies, appropriate to childhood, rarely serve adults well. The hypervigilance that protected young Huntress became prison walls, isolating adult Huntress. Her fear of softness prevented her from experiencing the very things that make life worth living. She was surviving but not thriving, and she had convinced herself that thriving was impossible for someone like her. Finn disrupted this belief simply by existing. He was soft and strong. He was vulnerable and capable. He loved intensely and was not destroyed by it. His existence was evidence against her philosophy, evidence she struggled to dismiss because she could not dismiss her feelings for him. The season forces Huntress to choose. maintain the philosophy that has kept her safe but isolated, or risk everything to save someone she refuses to admit she loves. She chooses love, not consciously, not through reasoned decision, but through action. She crosses dimensions, fights wizards, kills cosmic entities, transforms herself into something new, all because she cannot accept a world without Finn in it. The kiss at the finale is not just romantic resolution, it is philosophy, surrender. Exceptional beasts, it turns out, are not too exceptional for love. They are too exceptional for easy love, perhaps. Their paths are complicated, their challenges unusual, their transformations dramatic, but love itself remains possible, remains worthwhile, remains the thing that gives meaning to exceptional abilities. Season 2 of Fionna and Cake ends with qualified hope and multiple threads left deliberately unresolved. The sweet spot is rebuilt. Finn is saved. Huntress Wizard has become something new and powerful. But Marshall Lee's encounter with Hunson Abadir promises future complications. The cosmic order has been permanently altered by the cosmic owl's suicide and resurrection. Cake remains in the undergrowth with the Karmic Worm, and Fionna, though she has grown, has not become some fundamentally different person. She is still herself, impulsive, caring, capable of both heroism and destruction. This refusal to provide clean resolution is one of the season's strengths. Real lives do not resolve. We do not reach states of permanent happiness or permanent enlightenment. We experience moments of clarity followed by renewed confusion. We make breakthroughs that we then fail to sustain. We grow and regress and grow again, spiraling rather than ascending. The show's treatment of heroism deserves particular attention. Neither Fionna nor Finn is presented as an unambiguous hero. Both make terrible decisions under pressure. Both carry damage that affects their judgment. Both need help from others to accomplish what they cannot do alone. The heroism on display is not individual excellence, but collective struggle, the willingness to keep trying even when success seems impossible. This vision of heroism resonates with contemporary understanding of moral development. We do not become good people through sudden transformation or pure will. We become better people through practice, through relationship, through repeated attempts that gradually reshape our automatic responses. Fionna at the end of Season 2 is not fixed. She is marginally better equipped to handle the challenges she will inevitably face. The multiverse that seemed liberating in Season 1 has revealed itself as morally complex in Season 2. Other versions of ourselves are not fantasy versions where everything works out better. They are simply other adaptations, carrying their own wounds and limitations. Farmworld Finn married Huntress Wizard and had children, but Farmworld also had its own catastrophes, its own losses, its own pain. There is no dimension where existence is easy. The psychological architecture the season constructed, the undergrowth with its trauma trees and pain balls, the cosmic court with its indifferent justice, the heart of the forest exploited by those it empowered, offers a vocabulary for discussing internal states that might otherwise remain unnameable. We all have pain balls that have never floated upward. We all live in cosmic systems that do not care about our individual struggles. We all contain hearts of the forest that can be exploited or nurtured depending on how we treat ourselves. The ending's focus on growth, rather than completion, suggests that the real story is ongoing. Characters will face new challenges. Relationships will be tested. The hard-won insights of Season 2 will be forgotten and rediscovered. This is not failure. This is life. We do not learn things once and have them forever. We learn and forget and learn again, each iteration adding something even as it fails to add everything. Fionna and Cake Season 2 asks whether we can become who we need to become. and answers with honest uncertainty. Some characters transform dramatically, others change incrementally. Some seem stuck in patterns they cannot escape. The variety reflects reality. Growth is neither guaranteed nor impossible. It depends on circumstances, resources, relationships, and choices that are never entirely free but never entirely determined. The title of the finale, The Bear and the Rose, suggests wounded resilience. Bears are dangerous and vulnerable, capable of incredible ferocity, but also capable of being destroyed. Roses are beautiful and thorned, offering pleasure alongside pain. The characters of Fionna and Cake are bear-like and rose-like, complex combinations of strength and fragility, beauty and danger, growth and decay. What makes this season remarkable is its willingness to sit with complexity rather than resolving it into simplicity. The questions it raises about identity, trauma, grief, love, growth, and heroism do not have simple answers. The show respects its audience enough to present the questions honestly, trusting that engagement with complexity is more valuable than consumption of platitudes. For those drifting towards sleep, as this analysis concludes, perhaps the central message to carry into dreams is this: you are like Fionna and Finn, like Huntress, Wizard, and Cake. You contain multitudes. You carry wounds. You have potential for transformation that you may or may not realize. The work of becoming who you need to become is ongoing, never complete, always available to be resumed. The bear and the rose persist. So do you. Sweet dreams.